Hi, this is Scott with eTrailer. Today we're taking a look at and installing the ETBC7 Universal Brake Controller Wiring Kit on our 2024 Chrysler Pacifica. The ETBC7 is going to be a really good option for people that have a Pacifica and want to get some wiring to the back of your vehicle and use a brake controller. This is going to have your 7-way plug installed on it and also your 4-way plug as well. So if you have a couple different trailers, maybe you have a trailer that just has a 4-way plug, you're going to have the option of using that. So it does retain that. It's also going to have your 7-way, which is going to be set up so if your trailer has trailer brakes on it, you'll be able to use that as well. This is going to be a really nice setup, and this is going to give you everything you need for your wiring from back here to your plug all the way up to the front of your vehicle and run up underneath of your dash. Now keep in mind you are going to want to have a pre-existing 4-pole wiring setup to your vehicle in order to get this hooked up. But other than that, once you get that all set up, you can run your wires all the way forward, up into your dash, clear up into your brake controller. You can use just about any brake controller you want to get set up on your vehicle, but today we installed the Tekonsha Prodigy P3 on ours, and I think it works really well. So if you really don't have time to do it yourself or the space to do it, you can always take a look at our dealer locator and get something done for you locally. If it's something you feel like tackling yourself, stick around, watch our video, and we'll help you get it installed. To start our installation of our brake controller wiring, what I did is I went ahead and got my wiring ran, and I have my gray duplex cable hanging out the back of our vehicle here. And what I did is I ran up and over our hitch and then ran beside our little cargo area here, ran up over to our cross member. I tied off here to keep it away from moving parts so our wire will stay here, ran up and over. Then we came up over towards the center of the cross member and ran right up over and then around the other side of our mount for our cross member. That's going to keep our wires away from moving parts or exhaust, anything like that, and plus keep our wire in place. Then we ran it around the gas tank. We'll come around over here, and we ended up tying off to some line under here, and then ended up running our wires up above our plastic holders for our hard lines and ran that all the way forward, up underneath, tying off periodically. And then we ended up coming up to our firewall where we brought our wires up away from any exhaust or moving parts, tied off, ran that up underneath of our hood, up towards the battery. In the back of our vehicle, we got lucky and our hitch already has a bracket set up where we can get our plug set up and mounted. So what I'm going to do is just take some nuts and bolts and just get this mounted in place. After we have our hardware in place, we'll just tighten it down. Now we just want to get our plug assembly fed into our mount. And we'll take our supplied hardware. Let's get that ran in. We're just going to take our screw with no washers and run that through all of the holes, get everything lined up. Now for the hardware, once we get the screws all in, we're just going to take a flat washer, our lock washer, followed up by a nut. And we'll do that with all 4 of our screws. Now we'll come back through with a 3/8 wrench and a screwdriver and let's get everything tightened down. Now that we have everything tightened down, we'll take our included 4-pole wiring and that will mount right into the side of our bracket. Now for our wires that we have coming out of the back of our new harness and plug, we're going to have these connectors on here, and what I want to do is just snip those off because we're going to be upgrading those to heat shrink butt connectors just because it's outside the vehicle, and I like doing that. Just give it a little more protection for our wiring. Now that we have that, we have our yellow wire, which we won't be using, so we're just going to end up taping this off and tying this up to our harness. We have our blue wire comes out. That is going to be our signal to our brakes on our trailer. We have our black wire. That's going to be our 12-volt power to our plug itself. And then we have our white wire. That is going to be run to a ground back here underneath of the vehicle. Now we have a 4-pole wire that comes out of the back of our plug, and that's going to hook into our existing 4-pole wiring that we have already set up. So all we're going to do is just plug those two together. Now we won't be needing this cover, so we can just snip that off. Now what I like to do is take a wire tie and run that through both of my plugs. And what that's going to do is make sure we keep everything held together. Go ahead and get that pulled down tight. Then we can snip off the end of that. Now I'll come back through with some tape and just tape that all up, and that'll give us a good seal. Now for our yellow wire, this is not going to be used. This will be used for reverse lights on a trailer. So what I want to do is just get this tied up out of the way. Just tape it. That way the wire's still there if they ever want to use it. And we'll just get a nice tape around that. With that taped off, now we can just strip back all of our wires. Now for our duplex wire that we have, I went ahead and just pulled off, just cut down the sides of our gray sheathing that goes over that, and I exposed both of our wires. So now I'll get those stripped back as well. Okay, make sure we have a good connection, give them a little pull. Now we have our blue wire coming out of our harness itself, and what this is going to be is our brake signal for our brakes on our trailer. So we're going to extend that forward with our white wire. So we'll just get that crimped in place there. Now for our black wire that comes out of our duplex, we're going to run that to the black wire that comes out of our harness. That is going to be our 12-volt power to our plug. And that also runs forward. Now I can take my heat gun and shrink up my butt connectors. Now we need to get a good place to run our ground. So I found a spot right up underneath here, and it looks like it has a good double layer of sheet metal. So I'm just going to run my ground with a self-tapping screw. I'll just run that right in. And after you run your ground, you'll just want to make sure you have it in nice and tight. That way you have a good ground. After you have everything all set up and put where you want it, now you can just tuck away your wires and get them tied up out of the way. One of the more important things you're going to need to find when you're setting up your brake controller is you're going to need to find the cold side of your brake switch. Now this can be a little difficult. You're going to be testing a lot of wires, and one of the things that I figured out is how difficult it is to get at the wires that are up in for our Pacifica. Now I did test the wires that are on our brake switch itself, and we couldn't get a signal out of any of the 3 wires that are on that. And the wire that's clear up in here that they say that it runs to is really difficult to get to. So I figured out an alternate way of getting a brake signal up to my brake controller. In the back of our vehicle, we did find out that we have this rubber cover that runs up into our gate. Now what this does is this is going to lead up to our third brake light. Our third brake light is going to be a really good signal for us to go by because it's definitely a brake only system. So what we did is we did some testing. We found this white wire with a dark green stripe, and we took our tester and found out after I had someone push the brake and then let off the brake that this is going to be our brake signal. So what I'm going to do is we got around 25 feet of extra wire, and we're going to run a wire tapped into this wire all the way down and put it in behind our trim run it down underneath of our vehicle, and then we'll run our wire forward and into our firewall, and that will give us our brake light signal. In our kit, we're going to have this wire tap. So what I want to do is just get my wire tap to go over that wire. That to go into its slot. May need to pull the tab out just a little bit. Now there's going to be a dead end side where we can put our wire that we're going to run forward into that. Make sure you have your wire in there really good. That way you're going to get a good connection. After we have that where we want it, we'll just take a pair of pliers, push down on that tab, now we just want to make sure we have everything crimped really well. Now we can close up our cover. Now, after we've made our connection, what I like to do is take my tester and check the other end of our wire with someone pushing on the brake and letting off and make sure we got a good connection, and we do. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and get this wire wrapped in behind our trim, and it's going to get that stuffed back in there, and we'll have it pop out the bottom of our vehicle. Now where our wire is going to come through our rubber seal, we're going to have this piece of sheet metal here, and what I want to do is just make a little bit of a notch here so that way our wire can come through and not get chafed up by this sharp edge, and it'll give it a little bit of room for our wire to come through. I'm just going to take a burr bit and just bring that down a little bit, just enough to give our wire enough room to go through there. Now we have a little tray for our wiring to sit in. Now we can just push our trim back over that. Now we ran our red wire in behind our trim. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did down here as I did up there. Just going to make a little notch for a wire to fit down through. Then we'll run it in behind our bumper and just put our rubber seal back in place. Now that we have our red wire ran out for our brake signal, all we're going to do now is just run this forward just like we did alongside of our gray duplex cable. Now we have our duplex wire out the front of our vehicle, and we also have our brake signal wire. Now what we need to do is we're going to strip this coating off of our duplex wire. So all I'm going to do is take my knife, and I'm going to start on one end, and I'm just going to work my way back. Just want to be careful not to cut into our wires. Try and stay in the middle of it. And just work our way back. And all that's going to do is open that up so we can get our wires out of there. Now in our kit, we're going to have 3 different circuit breakers. We're going to have a 40 amp. They're going to be marked on the side. This one here I have in my hand is going to be a 40. Then we're going to have a 20 amp and a 30 amp. For our brake controller, we're going to end up using the 20 amp for ours. And with these, you want to make sure you're running your battery side that will run to your battery for power to your copper lead, and your silver side will run out to your accessory. So to get these mounted up, we need to find a good solid location. So I think what we're going to do with ours is we're going to take our one that's going to run to our brake controller, and we're going to get that mounted up right over here. And then for our other one, I think we're just going to try and get it to go right here. May have to just tip it just a little bit to find metal on those, and we'll just self-tapper both of those in place. We have our 40 amp circuit breaker mounted up, and what we're going to do is we have our wire that's running all the way to the back. So what I like to do is just leave a little bit of extra on this, and we'll get that snipped off, and we'll strip off our end. In our kit, we're going to have our ring terminals. Just want to get that on the end. We're going to use one of the small ones. Let's get that crimped in place. Okay. Now we'll take that end that runs to the back of our vehicle, and we'll put that on our silver post. Now we'll just take our 3/8 wrench and tighten that up. Now we're just going to make a jumper that comes off of this one, and it's going to end up running to our positive for our battery. Now we did discover that we have a constant 12-volt power right here that runs directly into our fuse box, so I think we'll use that one just to make things a little easier and a little bit closer of a run. So when we're making our jumper, all we're going to do is just do like we did and crimp on one of our small terminals. We'll get another one of our nuts and get that screwed on. Now this one's going to be going to our positive terminal, so we will be attaching that to our copper side. We'll get that tightened up. Now we can figure out the length of wire we're going to need. I like to leave a little extra. So we'll go with about that there. Now we'll just cut off where we need it to be. We'll strip off our end. Now in our kit, we're going to have our larger terminal. We'll get that crimped on to the end of that. Now that'll be the end that we end up attaching here to our power. Now we'll get our other relay figured out, and we'll get our wires set up for that. Now we did have to find a grommet in our firewall, and we did find one that was pretty easy to get through, and that's where we're going to end up running our wires to. Now the wires we're going to be running in is we're going to be running a white wire in. That's going to be an excess piece of wire that we have out of our duplex, and we're going to have another black wire that's going to be another excess from our duplex wire. And this is going to be going in for our positive. This is going to be coming out for our ground. We're going to have our red wire, which will be our signal for our brake light switch signal. Then we're going to have our white wire with the blue tape on it, and that's going to be for our brake signal to our brakes for our trailer. Now what I'm going to do is I ran a fish wire through, and basically just a piece of plastic tubing. So what I'm going to do is tape all my wires onto my tube and use that to pull that in through the dash. Now we can just start pulling our wires through with our fish wire. I do recommend putting a little bit of maybe silicone spray or something like that, or some soapy water on your taped up wire end. That's going to help you get it through your grommet quite a lot easier. Now we have our ground wire that comes out of our dash, and we're going to end up running that over here directly to the ground on our battery. So with that, we have our negative terminal right here. So all I'm going to do is take a 10mm socket, loosen up that nut. Now we'll attach our ring terminal from our ground directly to our battery. Tighten our nut back down, snug that down. That's going to give us a good ground. Now for our power wire coming out of our dash, we got a ring terminal on that. That's going to be our power wire to our brake controller. Let's get that put on our silver post for our 20 amp circuit breaker. Get that tightened down. Now that we've done that, we'll make another pigtail that comes off of our copper, and we'll run that over to positive as well after we get everything all hooked up. Now for the first thing we want to get set up is we have our white wire coming through our dash, and it's got the blue tape on it. So this one is going to be to the blue wire on our harness. So what we want to do is just get some of that cut back. We'll get that stripped off. Now what I'm going to use is heat shrink butt connectors. It just gives it a really good connection. Then we'll take our blue wire that comes off of our harness. You may want to strip off a little more of that, so we get a better bite in our connector. With that done, we'll get our power wire that comes off of our harness, which is the black wire. Connect that. Now after we have our blue wire connected, we can come back through and just coordinate all of our wires that we have coming into our dash to our harness. So we'll just get all those crimped together. Now, since I used the heat shrink butt connectors, I'll come back through with my heat source and shrink up all of my connectors. Now, with everything all hooked up underneath the dash, we can go ahead and get our power supplies hooked to our 12-volt power. We'll just take both of our ring terminals and get those connected. Now we'll reinstall the nut. Today we're using the Tekonsha Prodigy P3 to check ours out, and what we have set up, everything's working really good. And we have a test box hooked up, so all we really have to do is just do our manual brake operation, and we can hear our box buzzing. That shows that everything is working. Now, with our test box all connected, we'll go ahead and run our manual brakes on our brake controller. And we'll go to full brake, and that's showing that it's working correctly. Now we need to figure out a good place to mount our brake controller. And I did look behind our panel here to the right side of our steering wheel, and just below this little vent here is going to be a good spot. We don't have anything back there that we have to worry about drilling into, and it also puts our brake controller at a good spot where we'll be able to see it easily. So in our kit, we have our small mount, and we have our small Phillips head screws, and these are going to basically self-tap themselves into the dash. So we're just going to use that, and we're going to go ahead and get them screwed in right here. Now in our kit, we're also going to have these machine screws. We're just going to run those into the side of our plastic holder and into our mount. Now to get these screws into your mount, it's a good idea to go ahead and run your screws into the plastic first, because they are not tapped. So if you just run those in, it'll make your life a whole lot easier. With our mount all in place, now we can get our brake controller mounted into our mount. With our mount up and our brake controller all set up and working, now we can go back through and we'll tuck away all of our wires. And that was a look at our ETBC7 Universal Brake Controller Wiring Kit on our 2024 Chrysler Pacifica. I'm Scott with eTrailer, and thanks for watching.